Good evening, folks. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 363, and tonight is a theme-oriented episode. Minor needs, to be specific. We are covering minor needs themes, and this is episode number 2, where we're going to focus on full-time versus part-time students and its relation to how they got the material, and further along, their teaching. Are they teaching full-time, part-time? In what capacity, both as student and teacher. So with our guests tonight are going to be Frank Shekosky and Ty Botten. These guys have been on before. So this won't be really about their background or, their FMA journey and what have you. Okay, because matter of fact, I can give you the episodes to reference as far as those are concerned. So without further ado, I'm going to be bringing up, if you're watching, please tell us where you're watching from, smash that like button, and we're just going to get started. And here we go. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey everyone, how you doing?
Good. I'm glad you guys were able to come on and all that. So I'm looking forward to this. We did the first episode. I think you guys were aware of it with Tim Gillette last Thursday night and got good reviews. He was somewhat sincere, I thought, in his commentary, his answering the questions and all that. And I thought the people saw that as well. So here we're gonna piggyback off this, and again, we're going to be centralizing on tonight is full-time versus part-time students, its correlation to how they got the material from Remy or somebody else, and also in addition to that, as far as teaching. So you both have a common tie, Eric Alexander. So I guess let's hear that. So Ty, Eric Alexander, the significance and journey with him.
Yeah, so that would be my venture into the part-time nature of it, right? I was originally a kung fu guy. It's still, I guess, my first art. It's no longer my major art. But anyway, started out there, and I met through mutual friends, Eric, and he took me under his wing for some of the modernist stuff, and I dove into that and loved it. But it wasn't until I met Remy and then became his student eventually that then it was became essentially my primary. So here's the deal. So 1 or 2 years with Eric only, not as long as Frank. But he opened the floodgates for sure. And I, as a grad student, had plenty of time to work on it. So that was really good. But yeah, it was part-time. I was trying it out. And then I was hooked when I met with the professor. And then shortly after that, Eric passed me up to professor, and I became his direct student when we could get a hold of him. So, but that's how that started. And actually, since Frank started with Eric earlier, and know him longer as far as training student goes, I think he's probably got some more to flesh out what I just said.
So before I get to Frank, when you say he passed on, is it because he moved? Is that what?
It was partly availability, and it was partly his shifts in focus. So he's originally a karate guy, very, very talented and well-known karate competitor. In fact, actually, Dan Anderson remembers fighting him back in the day. So it was of that era, and it was a job. But yeah, so there was a couple of family issues and things like that, and he dialed back on Arnis, and it was eventually funny because several years down the road, after being with the professor, probably 2 or 3 times longer than I've been with Eric, then I had the distinct pleasure and honor of paying back and catching him up on some things that he missed in his break. So to me, that was quite an honor and amazing, and I didn't presume anything about it other than, wow, I can help, and it was a way to pay back.
Oh, that was nice. Yeah, here you go. You get to repay the favor, so to speak.
Yep.
All right, Frank. Same question for you, as far as the significance of Eric Alexander in your journey.
Very significant. I don't know if I'd even be in martial arts at this point if I hadn't met Eric. He came up from Kansas. He was a Kansas State kickboxing champion. Short of Joe Louis, I don't think I've ever worked with somebody who's a better fighter. And you never know it because when you talk to him, he's kind of quiet spoken. He never tells you a lot about his background, but just an amazing fighter. He had a background in Goju. He worked under Sam Price and James Crenshaw. He had background in Shorin Ryu. But his big thing is, I think he made it like 13th in the country in tournament fighting. I think he could have easily made top 10, except that it was hard to get money to travel to all these tournaments and everything. And he had a hard time getting to all the tournaments. But He made it to, I believe he told me 13th in the country. So when I started martial arts, I liked it okay. It was all right. And then one day Eric walked in and a little voice in my head said, if you want to be good, follow that man. And he was just different than everybody else. He was such an amazing fighter. He would go afterward and talk philosophy and just talk about our lives. And he was just different than any other instructor that I've come across at that time. And one day he came driving up on his motorcycle. He had these two handle-looking things sticking out of his backpack. I thought they were tennis rackets. So I said, oh, I know you play tennis. He goes, I don't play tennis. These are sticks. I'm like, oh, okay. And he pulled on, showed them to me. And honestly, I wasn't that impressed at first. I'm looking at them, okay, they look kind of boring to me. But he kept going on about them. So I said, if this guy thinks there's something that sticks, there must be something to him. So I took a few lessons and I started to really like it. And then we went to our first camp. And then when I met Professor, that was it. That really became more my focus over anything. I was like intermediate level in Kempo at that time. And then I started the sticks. And then I just really fell in love with the sticks. So Eric is really the one that taught me my fundamentals. He taught me how to fight. He introduced me to modern Arnis and the Professor. So he, like Ty said, gateway. I guess you could say he was kind of the gateway for me as well. And I trained and with him for about 5 years until he moved out west to Colorado. And at that point, that's when I moved to the Professor, strictly punch train with him for the sticks.
So how old were you at the time when you were first exposed to him?
Early 20s.
Early 20s. Okay. And now, at this time, you're under Lee Lowry, right? Or
no, I met Lee Lowry, and he's awesome,
okay.
and I trained a few times with him, but he was never really formally my teacher. Eric really always was.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, Eric learned from a few of Lee Lowry's students, and then Eric taught me. So I've met Lee Lowry, but yeah, he was never really from a lineage as far as my learning.
So I'm assuming Eric has school in Connecticut then? Or?
No, he worked out of a Kempo school that started in Cromwell, eventually went to Rocky Hill. So he worked out of there. He was one of the teachers in that school.
I see. And how? So,
Arnis club. We had a separate Arnis club just doing Arnis.
So when you say separate club, I mean, was it a separate class that he offered at the place?
Totally separate. Yeah, the main school was Kempo, but he offered a separate class, strictly modern Arnis.
Okay. Okay.
And then when he left,
Ty, how'd you get to meet him in Connecticut? I mean, because you were, I'm assuming.
Actually, I think I met him. Either he was already starting to make connections out in Colorado, or he had already moved out there. I'm not sure exactly the timeline, but I met him because of the Colorado connections. Because one of my best friends coming up was the top student of the guy he was getting an association with out there in Colorado Springs. And the reason that's important is because me and my friend are in Texas, but because of the connections there, we had a lot of interactions with Colorado. And took advantage of that. We'd host him or go up there or vice versa. And basically it's a giant club of, hey, we want to all do cool stuff and keep going and sharing.
All right. Because I was wondering, like, when you mentioned, when I realized you both had a connection, I'm thinking like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's weird. You were in Texas, you're in Connecticut, he's in Colorado Springs. What? What the what?
Yeah, Eric moved to Colorado and then was a teacher at a school out in Colorado. And then I know he was in Texas for various camps and seminars and things. So I'm sure you connected with him somehow there.
Yep. Yeah. Terry Bryan was a gentleman. He's passed now, but he was an amazing karateka who also was big in getting stuff into the Olympics. It never quite got there at the time, but yeah, he was a mover and a shaker.
So one of the things that Hirschford's phrase was, I believe, when I had Brian Zielinski way back. Oh my gosh, this is going back like pre-50 episodes, something. I mean, like 300 episodes or so ago, was the art within the art. So, Ty, what is, for folks who maybe have heard that, but maybe fully don't understand it, what basically does it mean to you?
That was, so in my mind, and I'm sure we all have thoughts on this, but in my mind, that was part of Professor's genius. How are you going to get all the, you're going to go around the place, you're going to have not a school, and you're going to do fancy seminars at giant locations with a bunch of really skilled martial artists. How are you going to make that happen? And what his stick was, you can give them some tools and some concepts and some delivery mechanism to make them better at what they are. So in other words, take a great martial artist, teach him some concepts and some information from his viewpoint, and also having fought and things like that. Put it all together, and he will make you better at what you do. and I resonated that a lot because I used to do seminars to help people get applications on their own material, even if I didn't know the material. And it was a lot of fun for both of us, right? I get to figure it out. They get to show off their good stuff. But so Remy, that was great. He was able to spread it. And the genius behind that was, if I go to your school, I'm Remy, right? I go to your school and I share my stuff for you and your students to get better. And then you carry it on and I go to the next place. Guess what? It helps your business. It helps you bring me back. And it helps me get around the place. And I've now spread all over the darn place. So that's why I think it was particularly genius. But you have to be the right kind of person. I don't have the charisma to do that. I think it's pretty rare, but that's amazing.
Yeah, emphasis on the charisma and just the personality alone, that you can have that, impart that on a school setting, a group of people, the owner, and just, make them see like the value and why they should bring you back and make, right. That's just not everybody.
Well,
Yeah.
you've been probably working with people, and you can, you may not know all the stuff they do, but because you can have a connection, you can help a light come on that they didn't realize before because of your unique perspective. Remy
Yeah.
did that as his whole, focus was to end up doing that, pulling the stuff out of you. The lights go on right and left, and I don't know if you're like me, you get addicted to that. I used to call those duh moments. I was ready for the next duh moment so that I could be amazed and mad at myself for being so stupid.
No, but people like that, like when you get that connection, obviously it resonates, and you want more of it with them, because you know what I mean. Because it just goes as a byproduct. You probably like them too, and you want to be around them more. That guy must have woke up in a good mood every morning, man. So, to go different settings, 50-something seminars a year or whatever it was. I mean, that guy was driven. Same question for you, Frank. The art within the art. What does it mean to you for folks who perhaps heard of it but might not perhaps fully understand it?
Sure. So what it means to me is, I'll give an example of the first camp I went to, or any camp really. I remember for me, it was like stepping from a small pond more into an ocean. Over here were guys that just came for Wally J seminar, and they had their fingers all taped up. These guys over here did Wing Chun. These guys were Tai Chi players. These people did Taekwondo. So professor wasn't saying stop doing what you're doing and do what I'm doing. He said keep doing what you're doing, but add in the modern Arnis. So to me, that's what he meant by the art within your art, is you add it into what you're already doing. He's not trying to convince you to stop doing what you're doing. And you find elements within your own art too of the modern Arnis. And that's one of the keys, I think, why it flowed well to any art, is because any art that I've ever studied, I'd say, oh, that's like right out of the modern Arnis. So every element, every art had an aspect of Arnis in it.
Okay. Back to you, Ty. Just so folks understand what Frank touched upon, adding it to your existing art, regardless if it's Tai Chi, Taekwondo, Kempo, kickboxing, whatever it is that you were doing previous to meeting him and being exposed to modern Arnis. Did he mean added to your punching and kicking, or did he mean, okay, hey, in the last 15 minutes class, do this? I mean, so like, how did he mean like the addition of it? So for folks that are watching.
For me, it sort of came up in a couple different ways. I'll do the one that I was going to go to, the first part of your question. Then you dragged me to some other places too. So the first one was that, finding a connection. So, I was big into Kung Fu, right? I was big into the application of Chinese internal martial arts, not the fluffy cowed kind of meditative point of view. I want to make the dirtiest fighting martial art there was. Remy had exposure to so many arts and experience across the board. And of course, having fought, he could make connections that you may not were aware of, and also use those to then get his points across. So when I first crossed hands with him, he had the kind of connection to the ground that I would see from the most senior internal stylists also in China and those arts, effortless. And you could also, it was with a sense of application, not a sense of the academic in terms of, hey, yes, I can generate power and see, look at the power. It's, I'm generating power and that's coming through with what I'm doing to you. And you better feel that. And so he would make the next round of connections. The other thing I can draw upon that is, in Kung Fu, we have a lot of things, Chin Na, right? The stand up, the joint lock grappling and things like that. Because of what Remy's connection for his own material, and of course, working with Wally J, he could connect what parts that you already had with what he did even better. I came back from, I don't know, after about the third or fourth camp with Remy, come back to my grandmaster in Kung Fu, and he goes, "Oh, where'd you get all your chin na?" I'm like, "Oh, it's in the forms," which it was, right? I was doing maneuvers out of the forms, but I got exposed and it pulled out and turned it into applications because of all the hands-on with Remy. Not the least of which, of course, is him using you as a dummy for so long, right? You have to feel it. But so those kinds of connections on the first side, right? And the other thing is it's just a way of dissecting and deconstructing your oral material. Some schools are really good at deconstructing. Some schools are really good at making applications. Other schools are good at sharing forms. And there's a cross purposes all around the place. But what he did is he made sure that you had the way to look a little bit further and a little bit outwards and a little bit beyond your normal focus, because he would connect it to the next thing across the street or the next thing across the room or the thing behind you weren't really looking at because you thought you were better. And he would link back to that. So now you're interacting with the material that you already know in the ways that he's pointed you and kind of lifted that cover so that you can see what you didn't know about what you already knew, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
gives
I
you
mean,
some tools to explore that.
if I'm understanding you correctly, like if he was able observing you, for instance, doing an empty hand combination, just by his viewing lens, and he could adapt something or pull something from his art and part it into you to make it better. If okay,
Yeah.
Frank, same question to you.
How did he add it into your art?
Not so much how, yeah, I mean, so yeah, I guess partly that, but how did he, I guess, again, coming from the art within the art, I mean, did he basically make your Kempo better, depending on what I'm using Kempo as an example from your background, or did he impart his art, okay, in the last 15 minutes, add this to your class, or did he give you specifically, hey, add this to what you're currently doing? I think this will help your Kempo.
Yeah. First of all, he was very good at making connections with all different types of people. I remember the first seminar I brought him into, there were different groups of people from different schools around the room. And one corner might have a certain type of people in it who were a little more laid back and had more of a soft art, and he'd approach them a little bit softer. These guys over here might be kind of more rough and tough and scrappy, and he'd take the toughest guy and put him on the floor. And they just thought that was amazing. And they were, he was there ever since then. He knew how to approach different types of people. How did he really add it in? With me, the first time he came out for a seminar with me, he stayed for 3 days afterward. And the first 2 days, we worked everything that I knew. And then on the third day, he said, well, here's where I think you're weak and strong. And he worked all where he thought that I was weak. So that's just for me how he did it. He kind of evaluated me. And then every time afterward, I brought him in for about 10 different seminars. He always stayed in a day or two, and similar type of thing. We'd work some things, and then he'd say, okay, I want you to work on this.
Wow.
So that's how it worked with me.
Interesting. So, okay. No, good answers, both of you. So then, again, the title of the theme episode, part-time versus full-time. Were there quote unquote full-time students? If the majority of students were exposed to it by virtue of him coming into an existing school that taught a traditional art, for example, and that instructor, by maybe constraints of schedule, could only teach it once a week, for instance, outside of you living with Remy or training with him in his garage every day because you're his next door neighbor, was there any full-time students? Ty?
I think it was pretty rare. And I think the closest thing to that would come up is when he stayed with folks and opened the fire hose, if you will, right? That was full time during that time, right? So in my mind, full time means, hey, we don't have any martial arts at full time students. So taking that off the table, right? We're not doing 40 hours a week doing martial arts of any particular style. That said, if maybe it's your only art, right? You didn't have any other background somewhere else. The only two choices you have to learn Arnis were either from Remy or one of his students, and usually his students, of course, had other arts in their background. If you do modern ice with me, you're going to feel a lot of my internal background because that's just how I move. It's built in. It's not the same as Remy, although some of the applications, some of the feel, some of the power is similar. but it's not quite the same. Now, does that matter? Maybe, maybe not. For applicability, maybe not, right? For what you're getting from Remy, maybe it matters to you. It really depends on your focus. But so I think, one, it was rare. People did it in seminars, they did it at camps, they did it with schools that were part of another school, right? So you learn from me as a Kung Fu guy. I do the best I can, Arnis. I even have a separate program, maybe, although not all schools did. So I think there's a spectrum too. So there are some people that taught it a little bit in their, we'll say, style X. I'm not going to pick on a style because it doesn't matter. It's going to be Senanju. There we go. The Senanju school says 10 minutes of every day, you're going to have some Arnis, right, in the regular classes. Other schools would say, okay, I'm going to have a regular Arnis class, but it's going to be 1 or 2 days a week. And other schools would make a real blend, right? Now I'm going to make a sort of a mix and do that because that's my expression. So which one of those is a full-time student? If you got a person who's a member of that school and they're fully committed to that school, maybe they're a full-time student in that paradigm, but maybe not in modern Arnis. Does it matter? It's up to you, really.
Yeah.
But I think they all have important impacts. So Remy was always learning too. So if you're interacting with him and he sees something you did, and he didn't say you could do that in a way where he wouldn't do that, he said that he would sometimes say that, well, that is mine now too. And he would then share the next thing somewhere else and give his spin on it because he took it, internalized it, and he could do that at a glance. So the reason I bring that up is the idea of a committed, solely modernity student is going to be rare, but it also it could matter in terms of, if I want to feel everything Remy had to offer and I can't find him because he's passed, how am I going to get that? It could matter for that. That said, if you felt Remy from 5 years to the next 5 years and you saw him every 5 years, he felt different. He moved different. He had new material or different stresses, different challenges too, which affect how he did stuff. And then lastly, on top of all of that, you get the whole idea of what is important about modern Arnis for you. So is modern Arnis Remy's, what Remy has developed and expressed to then propagate as an art across everybody else? Is it self-defense? Is it competitive sparring? And there was some rules for that and some consideration for that. I mean, it really depends. But the whole point is that I got distracted. Sorry.
No.
The exposure and the interest kind of defines what's part-time. Am I really, really interested in Arnis and I want to do the best I can with the resources I have? You could say that's a committed full-time student, regardless of what level that ends up being. There are times I came away from a camp going, wow, if I don't have anybody, I still have a year's worth of material to work on. And if I do it its justice, I have plenty to work on. Did I do that? I think I did a pretty good job of that. But I know others that they didn't have that mindset, or others that noticed that, but they didn't make the time to do it. So here's the dumb answer that I always have, which is it depends.
No. Well, yeah, it depends on how seriously the student took it. Were they responsible for their own journey? You know what I mean? Frank, same question.
Sure. So first of all, as far as how I got it is, not only did I bring them in for seminars every year, once or twice a year, but I got out to as many camps as I could. At that point in time, I had no family. I just had an 8-hour-a-day job, no responsibility, and it was good timing for me. So I was able to get to a lot of the Massachusetts camps, Illinois, Florida, Georgia, Texas, 1993, I think it was. So I had a chance to learn it that way. In terms of full-time students, it depends how you want to define that. So I guess instead what I'll say is most of my students, it's a second or third art, that's most students. I did have a few though where that's all that they do. I have one guy 7 days a week. That's all he trains, nothing but modern Arnis. There's more than 1 or 2 categories. You have the person that only does one art, and then you have the person who does another art, but they add in another art. But then what I do is I actually have 3 separate arts. Each one is a standalone art. You could combine them, but I don't teach them that way. I teach them 3 different standalone arts. I have Kempo, modern Arnis, and a whole weapons program. So it's not an add-in. It's a whole separate curriculum to itself. I tell people you can take and add it into your school, your art, but I also have a whole standalone curriculum. And I would actually encourage people to cross train. Sometimes I hear, well, unless you're full time in this, you don't fully get the depth. I don't agree with that. Here's an example. I've always felt trapping hands was one of my favorite things to do, and I feel like I'm okay at it. But when I started to take some Tai Chi, I got a little different aspect of the trapping hands. When I took some Wing Chun, I got more, I feel like I'm better at trapping hands now because I did learn a little bit from Wing Chun and Tai Chi. So I encourage people to cross train. I don't think it's a bad thing to stay with, to cross train. I think actually I encourage my students to do that. I hope that answers your question.
Why would you take that Jeet Kune Do approach?
well, let's take a look at what Professor did. Did he only do one thing? No, he did judo, he did Shotokan, he's done some other things, and he kept learning as he went. He'd be sitting there watching LHA, and his locks got much, much better.
I'm sure.
I saw him watching Joe Lewis in Pennsylvania doing a seminar, and I saw him adding it into a single Sinawali boxing drill. He never told this to me, but I think he got it from watching some of the Joe Lewis drills. So he was always changing things too, So watch what the teacher's doing. How did he get that?
So a friend of mine has a approach on that with, Jack Latour. I think both of you guys know him.
I know who he is.
He likes to go to other people's seminars, not to learn their art, but to learn how they teach and how they understand their art so he can apply it to his. I have a student, a Kung Fu guy, who's really good at Kung Fu, comes to my classes sometimes, and he takes it not to learn Arnis, but to one, be in student mode, and two, he gets to think about his own material from a different perspective because you're trying something else. So that's one of the benefits of cross training. Like I said earlier, it made my chin na better, and I didn't take it for that at all, right?
Yeah.
I think Modernese makes your other arts better, and I think other arts make you Modernese better. I think if you train in the right way and keep open-minded, I think they complement each other.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because a lot of times people want to pick and choose and then discard stuff before they find out it's useful or not. Sorry to pick on some people. But
yeah,
you kind of have to have your foot fully on the ground before you mess with other things, unless you're that kind of person who can synthesize on the fly. Again, it depends. How are you as a student? How are your instructors and what are your goals? And how well can all of that be meshed together for the situation at hand? If it works out well, you win. If it doesn't, maybe you need to learn monolithically because that's how you learn, or maybe that's how your teacher teaches. You can do that too. You just have to be careful.
It's a good point you brought up. I just looking at my own journey, it's like I think the teacher has a big part of that because especially when you're new, you're going to tend to model after what you're being exposed to. You know what I mean? Because that's your frame of reference. So if they're telling you, oh no, they go to this and that, it's ridiculous, and then in the beginning, you're probably going to be in that lane until you're exposed to something else, or you know what I mean? And sadly, I think that's just awful if teachers do that, or if they're still doing that. I'm sure.
Well, some things are counterproductive. Like so, my normal way of doing internal arts, it's a kind of you're using, for lack of a better word, I'm not going to say even weighted, but you're losing two feet at the same time. I know two different other styles that generate a lot of power by the way they shift from one leg to the other, and opposite. So all three of those, if I tried to get you to generate good power, I have to pick one. I can't tell you to do it all three ways because you're not going to do diddly squat. You're going to fall down. But we could actually explore that over weeks and months. Hey, we're going to work on the single leg A this way. Now we're going to work on the single leg B this way. And now we're going to work on the more traditional Central China way. Whatever you end up doing. But you just have to know what you're getting into.
Yeah. And be open-minded, like Frank said.
Yeah. There's more stuff on heaven and earth, right?
Yeah. Somebody made a comment here. I just want to get your guys' opinion on it. And basically what was mentioned, let me just see if I can find it. It's from Andrew, and basically what he's saying is the art was taught. You taught the art, not the combat. Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Yes. So Remy, he was not teaching you to do what he did, right? He did fight. He did fight in plenty of bad things. He taught you something else. It has some applications on self-defense, but he didn't teach you self-defense. But that was his bent, was make it more accessible and spread the Filipino sport culture, as he called it, and expose people. Now, where you want to go with that is up to you, but you have to put in the work and you have to put in the insight and the bruises to do that. You didn't have to. In fact, some people got in trouble for doing that. He didn't really want them to, but because he didn't want to get that look, because it might then bounce back and then people wouldn't want to do this art that he loved and developed to be accessible to folks. So are the roots there? Yes, because that's where it started, right? He's an incredible fighter. Anybody who ever crossed sticks, hands, whatever with him has that feel and knows it. Even if you did it in training, once you saw him spark a little bit. But he did not teach, yes, there you go. So another person, he didn't teach dueling, right? We didn't do dueling. We didn't do actual life or death combat. We didn't do full contact sparring. He didn't even teach point sparring, right? You could do that and explore it, and he had rules for it. But he did not push that, because how are you going to do that if I'm going to spread it to all these varied schools? It's a Tai Chi school, a sport Taekwondo school. It's a form school. How are everybody get a piece of what he has if it's into some aspect that they're not interested in, right? Because not everybody does martial arts for the same reasons, right?
Absolutely, right. And so if you got people who are just taking it for health reasons, or it got them off the couch, they were in a,
or it's just fun.
Yeah, right. Or exactly, you know what I mean? And they didn't really have an interest in hitting anyone, you know.
I had one colleague who he would take a lot of the things he learned from Arnis, and then he'd go in his backyard, put on the equipment, and they would try to take the stuff they learned from Arnis and actually put it in a combat form.
Yep.
So some of the responsibility is kind of up to the student to look at the art and kind of say, well, what do I want from this? Do I just enjoy the art part of it and want to do the form? Is the combat my main thing? Well, then try to pull from that. What could I actually use in combat? So the student has to kind of take some responsibility to pull from the art. What is it trying to get out of it? Or talk to the teacher and say, look, here's what I want. What can I do with this art? What path?
You had to do your work, and you could even ask him about some of those things, and he would avoid the questions because he did not want to. You had to pull it out of him over a long period of time, and even then, it wasn't the same as if you did what he did. Nobody's doing what he did, right? Nobody had to go through all that, and he didn't want them to have to.
He didn't want people to do that right when he was spreading the art. Yeah, I totally agree, Frank. I mean, right. If you're the student and you have some tenure in, you know what you want, there comes a point where you're responsible for your own journey and where you want it to go and what you want to make out of it. You know what I mean? If you want the more combative aspect of that art, well, then, at some point, you're going to need to direct yourself in that lane if that's what you want.
Do that work. It's not going to come magically from XYZ drills or forms or whatever.
So back to the full-time student. So basically what I'm getting, from the previous episodes, I'm going to piggyback off a comment Rocky made here, is that few and far between, quote unquote, full-time students. Sounds fair?
Very few and far between.
Yeah, very few and far between. Rocky.
There were a lot of dabblers, and there was room for that, though.
Yeah, and that's okay. Each person has their own agenda. It's nobody's place to tell somebody what their agenda should be. I've had students.
Your journey is your journey, right?
Yeah, I've had students just want to learn something new. I've had people new to town and they just want to join a club and meet people. I've had people that really want to fight. It's all good. Just tell me what your actual goal is, and I'll help you to get to that goal the best I can. But they decide for themselves what their goal is. We just have to do the right thing and tell them the reality. That's fine if you want to learn the sport part. That's cool. As long as you realize it's not actual combat. We have to clarify each component.
Right, and they want that. You can direct them where to. Right, at least you're being truthful, honest to them. So Rocky, he would stay at my parents' house from 82 to 83 to about 89. Months at a time. So we trained 4 hours each day, and they trained under my father in catch wrestling, judo, boxing. So it sounds like Rocky, there were times when Rocky could be construed as he was a full-time student. Certainly during those years when he was staying there for months at a time.
Yep.
But outside of that rarity.
And don't forget the ice cream when you read that, though. Ice cream's important.
What's that?
Ice cream is
important. Oh, yeah, and the ice cream. Yeah, you love to go and have ice cream every day. Well, So it sounds, yeah. So few and far between. Okay. All right. So all right. I got another comment that came in here. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Exactly. Started falling away when more, so we ended up driving away. All right. So Remy and I started falling apart when I wanted to fight more. It just ended up driving a wedge through us. I idolized. Um, oh man, the comments are coming in, so I lost it. I idolized Tom Bizzio, everyone of Vallarta, you guys that like that, Remy 11, but he hated it at the same time. That's why he trained me in Balintawak years before most inherent. So he trained. Okay, so Remy had the Balintawak aspect. All right. But
Yeah, I mean, you got to respect the people that are gonna take some tools and tear them apart and explore them and see what parts where the roots came from and put the pressure on and bang. But not everybody wants to do that. Just as long as you know what you're doing of that. So if you don't want to bang, don't claim to be a banger. If you want to bang, then you better bang if you're going to claim something.
If you're going to claim it, right?
Yep.
And back, and goes back to it, again, the journey, student, exactly what Frank was saying. I mean, you're coming there for different reasons, and that's okay. If you're coming there, just it's getting you out of the house, and you're having fun, and you're training something, you're getting a skill set. Well, hey, more power to you. You know what I mean? John Bryant had a Arnis school in Buffalo.
That might have been back to the thing of the full timers. I'm not
so
sure.
I guess he would maybe fall in the umbrella of full time then. All right. Okay. I assume that wasn't any time recent.
Well, there's another discussion like dedicated schools and not dedicated schools. It's
yeah.
I mean, it's a spectrum, and I think the discussion of what this spectrum starts from and what it entails and what the trade-offs are is interesting. But where you fall on the spectrum is not important, as long as it fits.
Yeah, as long as you were enjoying it. How many people truly taught combat in seminars? I would say
Seminars.
0.
Maybe Dr. G.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe some of the MMA guys.
All right, that's where I started. Greetings from where we got Tom. When I met Remy, I was training amateur kid, but Remy knew very few wanted to bang. Yeah, in the States, right? He was going to additional schools, so if he went in there as a banger, I'm guessing he wouldn't have spread the art as much as he did. I mean, yeah, and the money equation to money.
There's spreading, there's money, there's all the considerations.
Yeah, you can't argue that, Andrew.
There's a lot of things I do that there's a very, very small niche I'm very, very passionate about, but guess what? Only like 3 people want to do it. So it's not going to spread anywhere.
No, I know. Once you start getting into that area of contact, pain distraction, et cetera, the numbers tend to go down.
That's one reason I like to play with PG Craig, because he does like to bang, and he bangs with the Dog Brothers, right? You've met him.
Yeah,
and he's been on your show. But he and Andy and there are some people that like to bang, but you had to figure out where that was hidden, if you will.
With respects to Remy and Arnis. Okay.
Right. There are people that do tappy and they think that's sparring. I'm like, you're doing a drill, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen tappy, and that is not sparring. I'll say that right now, right off the bat. If people want to come attack me, they want Dean Franco's show sucks now. He should be banned from the air.
Right.
Do your thing.
There's some neat pattern recognition and body understanding and placement recognition. There's some neat skills and neat things that's funny, but same with juggling.
Yeah, it's a drill. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely not sparring.
That's one of my pet peeves. I'm going to jump on it because Frank said it. I'm not against you, Brent. I'm jumping on that. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Yes, drills. You don't fight with drills. Sorry.
No.
So when you say you can break a drill, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so proud of you. I don't care. It's a freaking drill.
Yeah, right. No, drills are not for sparring. Yeah, no argument. Yeah.
Well, and sparring is different than
fighting.
Life or death combat on a street is different than warfare combat, which is different than no holds barred combat, which is different than point combat. Blah blah blah.
Exactly. Yep. So, all right. So, but back to keeping it separate, blending, and all that. So sounds like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. When he got into those schools, they would maybe tailor their schedule to basically have a separate modern class, like with the exception of the gentleman there in Buffalo had a modern school. But for the most part, the majority either create a class for it, or would they do kind of like the add like maybe the last 15 minutes to a class? I mean, generally speaking, was that kind of the format folks would do that received him and his art?
I'll let Frank talk, but I just want to say, well, there's another type too, which is the one where they'll do, hey, we're not going to do regular classes, we're not going to insert it in our style X because we don't want to pollute it or wherever it is, but we are going to every once in a while I'll do a quarterly seminar on it, and you're free to come to that too, or I'll charge you. But so then it was sort of outside but resident, if you will. And then there's other variations, but maybe Frank's got some more ideas.
Really, it just never really had the numbers. I mean, the school that we started in, me and Eric, it'd be a separate class and a separate day, strictly modern Arnis, but it didn't have the numbers of students that the Kempo did. So it was primarily a Kempo school, but it's not that the Arnis was added in. It was his own program, but it was a small program. But at my own school, I had more opportunity then to really get more people in the door for the Arnis, because the owner of the other school was more Kempo minded. So me and Eric were the ones trying to get Arnis people in the door. But when I left and opened my own school, I had more resources and ability to make the classes bigger for the modern Arnis. But that's the way I usually saw it, as a separate class unto itself.
So status quo, you have a separate class in your school dedicated to modern Arnis.
Right.
Okay. And it's, so basically 1 day a week is correct or no?
Sometimes it was 1 day a week when I got bigger numbers going. Sometimes we had 2 or 3 days a week. Now that's just the group class. I teach private lessons almost every day. So the group class is once a week, but then there's private lessons almost every day. There's seminars, all other things. There's DVDs I sell, so there's all other things going on. But the group class, where we all get together at the same time, was typically once a week.
Once a week, okay. And as far as you go, Ty, you're mostly, I mean, with your work schedule and everything else, it's more kind of hobby sharing. I mean, but you do seminars and all that. But as far as individual teaching, what you got the group on Sunday or?
So I've done everything. So I've started. Remy said, "Hey, you will start a club at A&M." So I started a club on campus, and that had regular classes, and it was just a Modernese club. So I did that. I had an off-campus school that I taught in my friend's school, and it was just Modernese. So I had those two things. I've also done the one where yes, it's gathering, or we do a camp training at a campground, right? And do those kinds of things, seminars. And currently, as you said, now I have a weekend, what I like to call training group, because it's not, the classes feel more like a workshop and not a seminar and not a class, but we've got the 1 or 2 days, one day a week, or if somebody comes over, we got more, but it's not enough to really get in depth, but it is enough to get some exposure and some interest and pass that along. And so we go up and down. We might have 10 or 20 people. 20 is the most we ever had. There have been also just been 2 of us sometimes. So, but it's very informal, and so that lets me be. As I told them, why do I do this? I need to get to be able to practice, and I want to work and develop my stuff and explore things and make sure that I'm on track or not missing something. And so, if I get to share it, then if you guys are willing to put up with that, then we can make that happen. But it's not the same class. So I've kind of done from classes and regular classes, because that's the student mode, and the off-campus or more of a commercial type school. Was different, and then there was a whole period where it wasn't like that, and done some privates, not as many as some folks.
Okay, no, yeah, with your schedule,
it's always been separate. That said, when you so Frank will do the same thing, I'm sure, and you, Dean, too, with your vast exposure. So what happens? There's a difference between what you teach and what you do, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's just that when I'm teaching X, I want you to know what all the X is, and maybe what some of my takes are and why. If it comes from elsewhere, I'm not scared of sharing other stuff, but I'm going to tell you what's from where, what's from who, what's from maybe Remy gave me something and I ran with it. I'll tell you so that you can blame me when it goes bad, or maybe you can give me credit if you really like it. But I that's one aspect. But so if I were, when you get in a situation, whether it's sparring or somebody, you're working with somebody and they just something pops out, and so something pops out of you. What you express is what you've internalized of all of your arts and what comes to the fore. And that's okay. But I don't, unlike Remy, I don't know how to teach that. Right. So it's in some sense, that's why I like to teach it all separately. I teach it all separately. I can show you my combination, but I'm not going to teach you my combination, because you're different.
Okay, no, no, no. You probably, yeah, you brought up a good point there about teachers. Like, now, like when I sold the school back 2012, I started, but much like you, that's really why I teach privately on that. It's a to share, give students what they want,
Mm.
that's coming first, but definitely to further explore my interest and to refine.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So 100% on that, man. You know what I mean? And who's better to do it?
Well, that's one of the best reasons why you want to teach somebody who's advanced in their own art, because now you're not really going against each other, but you can sort of see different takes on things and go, oh my gosh, wow, that's why we do this. Or maybe that's why, oh, that's why he said that and I didn't take it until now you did something and I get it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
it's you start making those links. I really do think, the benefits of cross training is that exposure from both sides to open your eyes a little bit. Sorry, I'm talking
absolutely.
too
Yeah.
much. That's what I get when I'm tired. Sorry.
No, 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 no. But I totally agree with you. I mean, the value of cross trading is, if you're not onto it or don't believe it by now, I'm not sure what's going to take it for you to believe it.
Yeah, a good
Um,
example of that is right now I'm working with Tom Sotis, a lot more.
who's
And
that?
and he does some quick strips and things that I see Professor used to do, but I never
Mhm.
quite got it down that well, Professor. He'd say, "Oh, you do like this, boom," and the knife would go flying, and we go on to something else. And I never quite got it. And Tom kind of broke it down slow and showed the details, everything.
Yeah.
So I think I'm getting better my knife and modern East because of what I'm learning from Tom Soda. So
Mhm.
so yeah, the cross training's been really helpful.
Yeah. Tom Sodas is not going to make you better, Frank. I don't know what you're talking about. Been with him for 5 years and he has not made me better. So good luck. Hopefully, Tom's not watching. All right, from Tim, there were some schools that taught a blended program. Okay,
That's true. A
okay.
lot of because a lot of people don't have the whole program. They see professor a couple of times a year, get a few Sinawali's, maybe one of the forms. So they add what they know. They
Hmm.
don't have enough to have the whole program.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of people do have a blend.
We got a nice comment from Tom. Ty hosts the spring and the fall FMA gathering. It's always a great time to share and learn different styles of Arnis Conley, which,
Thanks, Tom. Checks in the mail for all the
yeah,
for all the
yeah.
money I charge for the thing.
Jeez, I'm gonna have to. I think I'm gonna have to hire Tom too. Even we haven't met yet, but I'll get him to say something. We
Tom's a
got
good guy, and
yeah, yeah. We
you would like
actually
him.
you're gonna actually be planning something with him in Maryland. So where do you guys actually meet? Ty, Maryland?
It's in a park in near the Fairfax.
Because you're in Virginia, right? Okay,
Yeah, but I mean Delmarva. It's all the same area. It takes
it's
an
pretty
hour to
close.
get
Okay,
anywhere. Yeah.
yeah, okay, all right, got it, got it. All right, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions or comments.
If I could reply to one thing, I'm not able to read
Sure
all of
do.
it, but I saw Rocky made a comment about Decadena, and I'm glad he mentioned that because I talked to so many people, and very few of you have ever heard of that. And that's the only thing I knew of, even way
Before
before.
pre tappy tappy. Okay.
Yeah, it's similar, but you're not tying up the hands and things like that. So I still do the Decadena, but I'm amazed that people tell me there was never any Decadena. What are you talking about? Professor told me it was basically trapping hands was an empty hand Decadena, and then there was the stick Decadena, which is sort of like semi-fixed sparring.
Yeah, it's a cane semi-sparring.
Yeah, semi-sparring. So
He said right here, tappy tappy is an example of the art
know that. Yeah.
getting
Yep.
so big that a new drill needed to be made that could be taught quickly. Interesting. So the tappy tappy coming off the single Sinawali
Doesn't have to.
doesn't have to. Okay. Okay. The shame is Degadena was lost and replaced by Tappy Tappy. Wow.
I
There was a
still,
lot. There was a lot that was lost. I mean, so in my mind, when Tappy Tappy started coming out,
yeah.
we had been focusing on all of what Eric shared, which is all of the original basics and all of the what they call traditionals now, and all the tools that got you there. And then other people came along and just learned Tappy Tappy, and they thought that a drill that kind of incorporates some of where some of the tools can get you, but not all of it,
Mm.
is the be all and end all, which it's not. It's just yet another tool synthesized from other tools, but you still needed to do your work with the old ones. Otherwise, you're going to not be in a good situation.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
in a lot of
go ahead, Frank.
I saw in a lot of cases Tappy Tappy almost being taught first, and the student doesn't have the basics yet. They don't have the disarm. And the theory I was told, well, it's all in the Tappy Tappy. That's just still not my approach. I believe in gradients. I believe first you learn the basic strikes, you learn the blocks, the disarms, and you build up to all of that. Because one of my tests is if I throw a strike at somebody, can they take it out of my hand if I'm not letting them? And I found in a lot of cases they can't because they've never learned the proper disarm. So anyway, that's my spiel on the tappy tappy.
Yeah, no, I think it's just I'm gonna have to get Rocky on here.
Yeah.
That paragraph right there to me says a lot. Like this is the first time I ever heard De Cadena in its relation to Arnis.
Most haven't.
Interesting. So is it fair to say, with regards to that, new folks coming into Arnis would never know that?
Depends on who you're learning it from. There are some
Who
people
you're
that
learning
stress
it
that,
from.
and other people that stress, from the ground up, which is what I prefer. Right? You gotta get the whole picture,
Right.
to see the whole picture. Right? I'm not gonna look at the really pretty glittery sunball in the corner and think I got it all.
He's going further on it. De Cadena had footwork, body mechanics, and was a basic fundamental to what Balintawak would call quintada.
Yep. Yeah, it was his way to show you some Balintawak concepts without teaching you Balintawak, because he said he wasn't going to, or was told not to, whatever the story goes.
Interesting, though, that totally makes sense, because what I've seen of single, and again, I'm not claiming to see all of it or all that, but making sense here that it had initially there was footwork, body mechanics, and etc. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying this about all practitioners, so I don't want this to get misconstrued, but there's some folks I've seen. I'm not seeing footwork. I'm not seeing body mechanic. I'm seeing anything but that. And that I was from an eyes, viewing lens, I'm like,
that used to always bug me. I wanted to move like a FMA'er, and I found that a lot of my peers were not interested in that. But remember, Remy was teaching people that already had other ways of move. He wasn't going to reteach you how to walk and stand and throw a strike and things like that. He was going to go, okay, I want you to add this concept so you can be better at what you're already doing. I'm not going to change all of what you're doing. So there's a lot of folks that are quite skilled martial artists, even quite skilled at what you can do with Arnis, that are not good examples. For me, I like internal martial arts. I would not tell you that I'm an example of internal martial artist. I can show you lots of good things. I can get you started. I do not move quite right enough for my own liking. You may not be able to tell, but just because you have a piece doesn't mean you have all of it. And it depends on the teacher. I can't remember the number of times that Remy would be teaching like a Sinawali or something like that, and then he says, "Don't worry about your feet. Just get this motion down and blend it as it feels natural." And then he would say, "Just move. Just be natural." And of course, while people are learning, guess what they don't do?
Move.
They don't move, right?
Yeah.
And some people never got past that.
To me, like that is just so, like I never understood it. Like, to me, it's very puzzling when I look at it and I'm seeing people trading, in a weapon exchange, drill format, but the feet are not moving. Like that just really
was also a question of scale. When you get really advanced people, their circles get smaller. In the case of Remy, of course, he had a problem with his feet. And he got to be where he was very, very, very efficient. And so if you weren't feeling or watching with your sensitive proprioceptive eyes, you might not know there was body shifting, weight shifting, hips twisting, or just a spiral happening inside. But if you knew what to look for, you knew what to feel, or if you're his dummy, that's the best thing, right? You don't have to try to look, you'll feel it. And that's all there. Whether or not he taught it he taught lots that he never taught, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like depending on what you're able to see and tune in, like you said. But yeah, just counterintuitive overall with me. If I see that and I'm not seeing,
no, it kills me, and I can see Frank grimacing too.
Yeah, like in other words, like okay, the stick. Let's just say, for instance, the most examples that we're talking about being illustrated would be stick on stick. But man, when you start introducing blades and you're going to carry that over into blade work, I mean, really, you're not moving. I just
that gets another pet peeve. Sorry, I'm going to indulge myself. So the people, some people say, hey, you're doing this martial art, so automatically you can fight. That's a bunch of bull. Just like, hey, I'm doing sticks, so I can automatically use a blade. In a pinch against someone not trained, maybe, but blades and impact weapons are different, as we all know.
Yeah.
You can use some concepts, but you have to adjust. Just like if you use a different weapon, or if I use a rolled up newspaper versus a stick, or whatever, right? You have to adjust, and you have to realize that that's part of it. So once you have really good weapon sense, sure, but don't take anything for granted, because if you had to take it for granted, you can't take it.
Yeah. Good point. Well said. Yeah. Well, at least we all agree on that, man. Better be moving those feet.
All right, I'll stop
Right.
ranting now, Frank. I'll let you rant some more. Sorry.
No.
Okay, I agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know. And more time, I just see that and I'm like, oh boy. But here we go. That time, that's why Remy and I argued so much. I understood that you have to be
Yep.
delicate when you teach previous trained people, but to make the beautiful art like Arnis Extrema, karate with a stick in your hand. Sorry, I just couldn't. Yeah, I don't say I could blame you.
I get you, Rocky. Yeah, it's. I miss talking. I think we. God, I haven't talked to Rocky in years, but yeah, no, yep, right there with you, Rocky.
Yeah. So, the, with regards to what regards, we pretty much established that very few full-time students, perhaps maybe some couple full-time schools, but that being a different subject. Um, the anyos, the forms, were they created for him to blend into the traditional schools? Was it an afterthought, or were they always there, regards to the students?
That I can only guess on. I mean, he never told me directly. I can just tell you this: when I first started in the late '80s, he already had forms at that time. Um, in my area, if you knew the first three, you were advanced. You know, nobody really knew, or I don't say nobody, only a few people really knew more than maybe the first three. What I was told is he created the forms so that a lot of Americans would take the art as a more legitimate art. They said, "What? An art with no forms?" And that's what I was told. I'm not saying that's true.
No, but I had that
He never told me.
feeling. Okay.
But I can tell you that every time he came in, he checked my forms. You know, so to
Mm.
this day, I still know all my forms and I practice them because if he thought enough of it to watch my forms every time I saw him in Connecticut, I said, well, then I'm going to make sure I know him. You know,
Okay.
So the forms, he had the stick forms in Philippines, and they didn't have the empty hand forms until he got to the States. Now you got to remember he was a Shotokan, I think 5th degree ish or something like that. He got up to, so he had a karate background himself in addition to all the other things. He was one of those guys that done all the things, yeah, I'll get distracted. I won't say the other thing, but anyway, so he came over to the States and did that. From my perspective, I think there's two things going on there. If I'm going to be around periodically and I'm going to share material with you, I need to give you, and you may not have training partners, I need to give you some things that you can do in a solo fashion. Forms are a great tool in that bag. They are, again, just a tool with its own limitations and applications, but to add to the bag. And what's more, some of his forms, since he had a Shotokan background, he could make that connection. Remember I was talking about that? He can make that connection with the people he's teaching to. A lot of folks had some of the similar forms, and we can tap into that, and boom, now I can get you what I'm trying to get you to do. So if you looked at the concept and deconstruct the forms, you had a lot more than what he was showing. One of the forms is exactly, as far as I can tell, like a karate form. I'm not a karate guy, so I could get that wrong. But I think that was the thing. He was one, trying to make a connection, and I think two, probably somebody asked him, because in the States a lot of arts are form driven.
Yeah.
And then three, he can make that connection and give you some material to work on your own. That's my thought.
No, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Right. On their own, they can have something to reference. Granted, limitations, like you mentioned, and it probably was suggested by somebody over here. That wouldn't surprise me, you know.
And I was told when he was in the Philippines, he had like H patterns. Like mainly he did the H pattern. But when he came here, that's when he created all the other forms.
H pattern was very karate-like, and if he came down the I mean, that would certainly be like your Tang Sudo or Taekwondo. Okay. Also Remy's footwork teaching sometimes was very painful to learn. He often taught old school where you stood on a table and moved, and he would hit your feet. He messed up. That was El Shisumo's uncles doing that to him. Spotted Dagger was taught, especially when he was the only escrimador ever met that referred to a Spotted Dagger as Cinco Terros. Yeah, I've never heard that. Again, this was all dropped because he couldn't be taught in a seminar. Wow.
That's old. That's some old school Chinese stuff back there. Because again, back from my background, that's what I'm thinking. My first lesson was horse riding stance for a half hour. There you go. Go. Try to do that at a seminar.
Horse stands for yeah.
I could not walk.
God. That's funny. Wow. So ranking within, again, we're going to go under the umbrella, again, mostly being part-time students. Ranking with regards to part-time students, was it predicated on obviously going to class, whether it was one class, per week, depending on where you're going, but also did the camps tie into testing your attendance there? How did it all play out?
My experience was just at the end of the camp, there'd be a test, and they'd have a board of people, and they'd watch you, and they'd call out all the material, and then they'd let you know where they think you land.
So, but how would you get on the board? Would your instructor?
Your teacher would recommend you for a certain level.
Gotcha.
And then professor would put certain people on the board, to watch the rank test.
Okay.
That's how it worked for me anyway.
How about you, Ty?
Yep, same.
Okay. So, all right. So, okay. Wow. Where do you, when we look at today, again, because really, if we look at status quo, I mean, besides Tim Hartman, is there another full-time modernese school? Not FMA school, but full-time modernese school. Is Tim the only one that has one?
Yeah, that I wouldn't know. Yeah. Tim's the only one.
Of all the episodes I've had on here, I think he might be the only one that quote-unquote full-time modernese. We identified in the teens, right. FMA schools.
Right.
Full-time.
Yeah, he's the only one I know of.
That's the only one I know of as well. There could be another one, but agreed. So status quo. So most of them, again, what you guys mentioned is that kind of not just part-time students, but also folks teaching it part-time. However, though, the student on their own volition can take it full-time, depending on what they want to do with the art. I mean, right?
Yeah, I've had students that take it very seriously. They do nothing else but Arnis. One student had a pretty slow job, and he was working in a warehouse, and every day he was practicing Arnis, and he moved tremendous progress because he put his time. Put his time
in. Right. Jim Gillette. Professor had written paperwork or testing paperwork they would go by and jot down notes.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what we used as a curriculum, as our base of a curriculum was put together all these old test forms.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's your curriculum. And some of us put it together and gathered in a way that, let us teach us. But yeah.
Commercial, there are full-time dedicated programs and clubs. Right.
Okay. So you summoned the Hartman.
Right. So what do you because we're almost done. What do you guys see this going as far as what would you like to come out of this theme episode upon conclusion, whether it's 6-7 episodes, upon the end, what would you like to see for the audience to get out of these theme episodes regarding modernese? What would you like to see, Ty?
I guess I used to always have a problem because a lot of modernese guys don't go around and interact with other FMAists, and I get that because they're already doing their other art. On the other hand, though, then that for the people that do FMA, a lot of times I used to have the challenge of, that people be surprised that I'm modernese. I thought those guys were X, Y, or Z, bad thing. And I would like people to realize that don't get confused between the art and the practitioner or the aficionado, right? It is a complete art. It's got plenty to offer. You could spend a lot of time developing it, which is why I had them separate, because I felt that way. And there's plenty of material there. And it's not just adding sticks to your program, because we got empty hand, we got a Spidey Dage, we got all sorts of things, including some classic drills that, wow, because I can tell you, we go to Pakiti Tertia camps, and there's not a thing they do that is not that is outside the realm of what, I've exposed to it from Remy. Not saying it's the same. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying I know Pakiti. I'm saying I was comfortable because of the background Remy gave me to do and play with most FMAS, which is great. We have the tools. I think we're serious. So don't get confused about the art. And it's funny because people will respect the heck out of Remy, and then go poo-poo the art or the students. I'm like, wait a second, there's something here you're not thinking through. You could judge by dabblers, and again, there's nothing wrong with dabbling. If I love my 3 or 4 other arts that I do, and I've devoted 50,000 years to those, and I also want to get some exposure to Arnis, that doesn't mean that I'm representing it, and also doesn't mean that Arnis is bad. It means that I'm committing what I feel like to it, and I really like those pieces. I love these other pieces, and that's okay. There's room for that. But anyway, I guess I would like people to realize that Arnis, don't have a predefined kind of assumption once you find somebody who does Arnis. You might be right, but you also might be wrong, right? You could look at me and go, hey, you're a horrible goober, and when you meet me, you'll find out you're right. But you should keep in mind that maybe there's something about when you meet me that I'm not exactly a horrible goober. I'm nice in this one corner of my mind over here. You shouldn't prejudge anything. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's true. It's so funny you mention that. You hit on something that's absolutely correct. You see this profound respect for Remy and what he brought to the U.S. and the spreading of the art in a Western civilization. But then when they look at the art and the practitioners in a general sense of community, they do kind of frown upon it. That is very interesting. And
we also do it to ourselves, right? Because we don't interact with other people for the most part. I don't. We being the larger sense, I think I do a pretty good job of playing with other FMAS. Since I make us all come together a couple times a year.
They don't. You know what though? I hate much to agree. They don't. It's like they're in our little community, and they don't. They just interact with Balintawak.
Right, and then you get inbred.
Yeah,
and Arnis is not the only people doing that. There are other FMA folks that kind of have that bent as well.
But with respect to Arnis, it's like either with themselves or the Balintawak community. There'll be some interplay there, but generally speaking, outside of that, they tend, and again, generally speaking, you know what I mean?
Just one other group, right? There's a group that works a lot closely with DKI, and that's cool. But that's not the same as interacting with your roots and peer roots.
Yeah, one of the things I'm going to do in Connecticut, the whole FMA discussion, going to other states and getting with 3 other 4 instructors. I'm going to do it in Connecticut. Even though Connecticut's, I'm just being honest, it's a tough state to get together with people. It is what it is.
It's too close to New York.
What's that?
It's too close to New York.
Could be, I don't know, but I am going to attempt that. We did it once, and it went pretty well. I think it's something that we just got to keep doing. Just make it just steady and consistent. Where it becomes the norm. It's not like what's going on over there. It's like, oh, when's the next one? When's the next one?
Which reminds me, I need to put together my spring thing. So it was going to be in around the 1st of April, but it can't be that exact weekend. But it's coming up, and everybody's invited. And it's free or a voluntary $10 donation. So please come, and you two, both of you guys can crash at my place if you wanted to.
Yeah, which is because one of the things I've been in touch with Tom from Maryland is coming down there and getting together with some folks. And we're and I was gonna make Tom, you, and come to my that was definitely actually after Carolina. Chad, Miami's slated, definitely, for sure.
I wish I didn't have to work. I could just do all these cool things.
See, you could just, you might have to look at that, what I mean?
I need to, yes.
Early retirement, and say, like, you know what, I gotta get together with these people, man. I can't be pulling around at work here. Frank, what would you like to see upon conclusion of these episodes? What would you like to see? Would you like to see maybe a thought pattern that changes from the community, misconceptions? I mean, what would you like to see?
You guys helped me segue into exactly what I wanted to say. because this would have come out of left field otherwise. Every so often, every blue moon, somebody will say, well, like, Kempo has like creeds and like, Taekwondo might have tenets or whatever. Is there any for modern Arnis? And oftentimes people will say, well, no, there never was any of that. I disagree. For any of you that ever had the Pink Book, if you've heard of the Pink Book, you see that?
I got it, yeah.
If you go to page 17, it talks about cardinal rules or principles in Arnis. And I never hear anybody talking about these things. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're teaching only the physical moves, you're only doing half the job without the rest of it. So here, Professor says in his own book, the cardinal principle in Arnis is respect for one's opponent as a person, as a fighter, and as a sportsman. It says also is character, sincerity, discipline, self-control, etiquette, and students' loyalty to his tutor. So there it is. I think that what we need is more of that. Everybody is in it for their own reasons, but we need some type of common glue to hold us together. What is it? Because, there's a lot of friction. We know that. We need this other half of it. That's what's missing. We need more of that half.
No argument here. I think you put it pretty well.
So that's my view. I think that's what we need.
Yeah, I can definitely agree to that and run with that. Absolutely. Yeah, what it is, it's just going to take an effort in concert from folks to make it happen, to kind of lay down their preconceptions or their strict affiliations and just kind of step outside the box and just be receptive to working with other folks and all that. And then like I mentioned, maybe the first few kind of be hard depending on the state you're in. Some states do it very well, incidentally. Like I look at Florida, and I think they're one of the models, to be quite honest with you. They just do it really well. They, by virtue of Chad and a few others, they get multiple different styles together, and they are a modeling state. I look at some of the other states, and I don't see them doing that, but that could be due to several reasons. But I'm hoping, one, my goal for this year, when I set my goals for 2023, is to make Connecticut more attractive in that regard of getting different folks together, whether it's a 1-day event, 2-day event, but FMA specific and that. And yeah, so I'm going to try to make it happen. I mean,
yeah, just what is it? The build it and they will come.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I did with my thing, and sure enough, people started coming. I'm like, that's weird. Okay, because it's not about me, right? It's about the opportunity.
Right, exactly.
That's where I think people get screwed around, is they think about all of this stuff and all the things where it gets personal, whatever. They think it's about them. None of this, in terms of an art or a system or a lineage, is about you.
Yeah, sorry, you're not that important. You're really not.
And you and I could hate each other, but guess what? We both love the same arts in our different way. We should actually pass that part on to the person we're talking to. We don't need to pass the negative parts.
Yeah, we all have something to offer, everybody.
That's also true.
We all have something to offer.
Yeah. So we got a break. So, so you both kind of said, the value, obviously, of people working together, the respect and all that. Ty mentioned the misconception of modern Arnis folks, and that. Anything else as far as do you guys like to see upon conclusion, closing thoughts?
This won't come out, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you weren't around enough to feel Remy in person, unfortunately, there is no recorded media that I know of that does him justice.
Status quo, like present day.
He was effective, and he felt it, and you knew it, and it was great. But he did not. It didn't. That stuff didn't go well to the screen. Partly because of the small movements he was making that he was too efficient for. Right. It just looks like he's standing there when he's really not. And I'm not trying to be magical. The point is that, unfortunately, for all the respect that he gets, if you weren't there to experience it, you might go back and look at things, but it's not going to be the same.
The question for you, is there somebody that was even remotely close to emulate what he did? In any, whether it was empty hands, stick, anyone?
At the time?
Now.
Oh, now. So it was funny at the time. One of the things was, if you're working with Remy, and Eric is a good example. I've told Frank this story, right? So if you were working with Remy and he started escalating the drill, yes, it's still a drill, it's not sparring, but if you escalate it and he felt like he wanted to switch hands to his, remember he was left-handed, if he was doing a right-handed drill with you and he switched hands to his left hand, you made him switch hands, and that was a point, that was a notch on your belt. You didn't make him, right? He still was to take you out, but the point is there were people that were kind of specialists, but at the time, no one I knew was anything like a Remy. There were some good people that emulated his shtick. Like, say, if you're going through some of the toppy, going through that, and maybe they got 2 or 3 of the sequences, and I'm gonna imitate Remy, including the mannerisms and all that stuff. Some people were very good about it, and they put the hours and time in on that, which was good because that set the groundwork for real results later. But it was show. As far as currently, oh gosh.
I remember doing the DKU professor, and it was just like an adrenaline rush. You know, he'd just come at you, and he'd come this close to your chin, full speed, full power. And then if you push him really good, he'd go, "Oh, but I'm left-handed," and then you put in the left hand, and then you're just doomed. And I remember Richard Roy put it really well. Richard Roy, who did the camps in Massachusetts, he said at that point you just try to keep up and stay out of the way and not get hurt. And I'd have to agree with that assessment.
And it wasn't bullying. He was actually pulling your best stuff out of you. I remember when he first started sharing some toppy stuff with me, and he was pushing me hard, and I have video of that. I thought I was moving. Oh man, I was reacting, responding. I watch it now, and I'm like, oh my God, that was slow, and I did the wrong stuff, and I set myself up here, and he took advantage of that. He was helping me because that's really what the feeder does in Blintuak. But like Jad says, you're just trying to survive, which I think that, and I still do that to this day. I'll push my students a little bit further than they want to go because it pulls things out of you. And if you're doing it safely, there's just nothing quite like that. No, it's not combat. No, it's not fighting, but it is some pressure. I don't like that word, but some challenge that you have to respond to, because just like anything else in your life, if you don't have to get better, you won't.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
That type of speed and power, your average person coming at you is not going to have anywhere near that type of speed and power. So you definitely come away a notch better.
Oh, I had one thing. I got him. So there was I don't know if you remember this, Frank. In one of the moves in toppy, he's got a hold of your arm. He pulled you across. You're supposed to release it. He told me to knock it, right, like almost like a down block to did it. But I'm a kung fu guy, and I'm conditioned, right? So I conditioned my forearms, and I did that a few times. And he said, yeah, you can stop doing that now. Do it this way, which didn't hurt him. And I'm like, yes, I did a thing. I did one small little thing.
Which the translation was, that's starting to hurt. So.
Yes, and I was like, wow, I had an effect, but it doesn't really matter. He killed me 72,000 times that day.
Wow. But hey, at one time, though.
Small victories, right? But Frank said it earlier, we all bring something to the table, right?
Yeah,
and Remy was classic at catching that, right? You did something, you came up with an idea, and if he liked it, he, one, encouraged you to keep doing it, and 2, he took it.
He borrowed it, right?
Yep. There's no stealing if he gave it to you, and vice versa.
Yeah, there's a story that one time one of Wally J's students ran into one of Wally J's seminars, and he goes, "Oh, I saw a professor doing something that you taught. He stole that from you." And Wally just laughed. Well, he just laughed and said, "Oh, well, I steal things from him too," and you just laughed about it. All the best steal from each other. I mean, you're not going to find something effective. You're not going to use it.
Going on for what? Hundreds of years now, right?
Well, in the last little bit of perspective, look at this. It's 22 years since his passing, and we're still talking about him.
Yeah.
As if it was yesterday, and he's in Frank and I's hearts and the hearts of so many. That's some amazing stuff. So
yeah, 22 years later, you guys are still so profoundly talking about him and all that. And I don't know if I see that in other FMA arts. I'm sure when some of the others pass, unfortunately, maybe that this dialogue will come out. But present day status quo, I don't think there's anybody, as far as me interviews or I've been exposed to thus far, of just seeing heartfelt conversation in regards to him. Like I haven't heard that or felt that yet on these shows, with the exception of you guys in regards to Remy. Yeah.
Amazing skill level, but also he made you feel special. He had a way of making you feel special. I remember at the end of the camps, he would call each person by name and call them up, and everybody clapped. You know, I don't know how I remember their names. On a rare occasion, you might forget one name and somebody whisper their name, but 99.9% of the time, he remembered everybody's name in the camp.
Which is, yeah. And that's come out several times on these shows regarding Arnis, how he made everybody feel special and remember their name. I mean, that's not the first time I've heard this, you know, so.
You mattered to him. And and the side effect of that, though, is that everybody mattered to him, so that we all thought that he was a special person. And so then that's where some people get bent.
Oh, no, I'm more special to him than you are.
That's right.
Yeah, that whole bit, right? Oh, geez.
I mean, I remember he made, me and Raymond his top representatives in Texas. And we knew what he meant by that, which was encouragement. And, hey, you guys should train with these guys if you get a chance. But it's not a position. It's not a title. It's nothing other than an acknowledgement and encouragement. But other people took it different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just hear that, and then they get felt slighted or misconstrued it. And here comes the negativity. And, yeah. Right. Wow, but hey, great episode. I appreciate you guys doing this. Ty, I hope you recuperate, get some sleep.
We've got some more work to do. So.
Oh no! Well, hopefully you catch up.
I got a couple done before the show. I got 2 more to go.
Yeah, but yeah, pleasure to thank you both of you, Frank too. Both of you guys. Thanks. This was.
Hopefully I didn't talk too much, Frank. I actually, I'm glad that you were pretty vocal across the board, but hopefully I didn't step on you.
No, you both played really well. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
We're on the same page for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Good.
no.
We have the same teacher, so.
Yeah. Nobody did a hostile takeover. You got.
Well, I just get carried away, so I have to watch out for this, particularly when I'm tired. I don't know what I'm doing. It's almost like I'm drunk.
No. You guys, I thought, did extremely well. Yeah.
Perfect.
We're on the same page, and even if we weren't, I'm able to be mature and disagree on things and still be friends. But I actually agree with everything you said.
Absolutely.
In this case, so Ty, we have to get you more on with less sleep.
There you go. Well, then I'll be all quiet.
All right. Hey, thanks again, you guys. We'll be in touch one way or another.
Take care, guys. Good talking with you.
Absolutely. Thanks again. All right. I'll get you guys out of here. All right. Get some sleep.
All right. Thanks.
All right. That wraps up episode 363. That was a good one. Yeah. Next theme episode, I have to figure out what I'm going to do, but I do have, actually, I have my topics listed here if you're so interested. And I think the next one's going to be the beginning days. And a couple ideas on that. Bruce Chucknick was referenced that he'd be a good one to bring on for that. Next topics could be changes through the decades. That's going to be a good one. Who else? Camps. That's going to be another one. West Coast camps. But then we got the East Coast. What else? I'm just looking through here. Future lens, like the future leaders. I think that's where Chris Chu is going to fit in. Yeah, so I kind of got these laid out for folks who are going to jump in an area that they can speak on, maybe perhaps better than others. But yeah, so definitely more episodes coming down the line as far as my Arnis and that. But as far as future guests, Miguel Ruby, Belt Lubas on at the hand, Mark Hollick, Carlito Bonjak with others too. They're going to be outside training Cabales. That should be really fun. That's the 29th. And who else? We got somebody on the 20th. Justin Boudoir, the Boudoir training group there. He's going to be coming on January 20th. Justin Fernando. Yeah, so we got like about 6 more guests, and plus the Modern East theme episodes. So plenty. But anyway, quick bits. Yeah, keep them coming, folks. Again, anybody can do these. It doesn't matter your rank, title, what system you do. 2 to 5 minute video. You send to me Facebook Messenger, or you can send it to my email. If you need my email, you just PM me. I'll give it to you. I just need a profile pic waist up. If you already submit one, resubmit another one. Okay, there's no limit. This is ongoing, so there's no time frame involved. Keep them coming. I have about, I'll tell you right now, 1, 5, 6, 7. I got like 8 left, but I kind of post, lately on average 3 to 4 a week. So without getting any others in, that in 2 weeks, this list could be exhausted. So please keep them coming in. Again, 2 to 5 minutes. It could be on a single theme, concept, tactic, a drill, whatever. 2 to 5 minutes. If you have something that's kind of broken down into maybe 3 or 4 aspects, well, then send 3 separate quick videos and I'll post them. But folks are really enjoying them, and plus it gets your name and what you do out there. So it's kind of like free advertising. I mean, I put it on the channel, folks are seeing them. So yeah, give that some thought, consideration. Quick picks, and you'll see them. They're all on pinned. When they go on FMA discussion, right on the top, they're all pinned. You can kind of see. I put the new ones in there, and then a couple past ones that are in there as well that you guys will see. What else? Chad Bailey's camp coming up February, first weekend of February. Trying to think what other notable camps or seminars coming up. Piper seminar next Saturday. Nick Merchant, I'll be doing it with him in Queens. What else? We're getting back to the joint online seminars as well. So I want to get that going back up. So again, if you want to do an online seminar with somebody, do it. You know what I mean? FMA discussion, will post it, advertise it, try to get some momentum going for you guys and all that. So yeah, look out. Other than that, I think that's it. But thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you soon next week. Let you know who's coming on.